My name is John Carlson, 45-year-old, 6 feet 2 inches tall and weigh around 200 pounds. I have dark hair and I have a rather rugged appearance since I do spend some amount of time in the outdoors. I also work out at the health club, so I am pretty well toned up. I am sure most guys think of me as being in good shape and no women turn away in disgust. I am a self-employed engineer, specializing in designing buildings to resist the stresses of earthquakes. I don't want to brag too much, but I am very good at what I do and am in high demand all throughout the Ring of Fire countries. Because of that, I travel about 1 week out of every month. I was married to Nancy, 43-year-old. Nancy was more than attractive. She could be a model if she chose to be. Her looks are stunning and her figure never fails to turn heads, both men and women. She is 34 years old, has long dark hair, is around 5 feet 5 inches tall, and her body is proportionally perfect for her height and weight. All right, for those of you who need to know, she is 36C 2435. We do not have any kids. A year back, I had been in Tokyo on business for a week. I left LA on Saturday at around 1 p.m. and arrived in Tokyo on Sunday at around 4 p.m., even though the flight is actually only about 11 hours. The international dateline plays havoc with those not used to it, but I was accustomed to the nuances of time change between the west coast of the USA and almost all of Asia. My week had gone well and I was right on schedule to get back to LA for the weekend. I had called my wife Nancy and told her I will be leaving Tokyo on Friday at 5 p.m. and should be arriving in LA at around 11:10 a.m. I told her, I miss you and I can't wait to see you. She asked me, what time do you think you will be home? I told her, by the time I get my luggage and pick up the car, I will probably be there around 1 p.m. or maybe a little later. She said, good. I can't wait for you to get home. I love you. I smiled to myself and said, I love you too, baby. Bye. She said, bye. As I said, I am a self-employed engineer specializing in designing buildings to resist the stresses of earthquakes. I make a comfortable monthly income, but as part of the fee for my services, I have always received a small percentage of the monthly lease value of each building I've consulted on. Also, as I said, I am very good at what I do and I have been very busy for the past 8 years, and the total from all of the buildings amounts to over $5 million a year. My wife knew about the income we have, but she paid very little attention to money. We only spend a small portion of the lease income, and unless we have major purchases like vacation homes, automobiles, or special items like jewelry and art, we do give quite a lot of money to charity and the rest is invested. Nancy just went with the flow on what investments we have, so I made almost all of the decisions. I did try to keep her informed, though, so she isn't out of the loop. One of the investments is in 3 health club franchises in the LA area. Nancy did not need to work, so she chose not to. She was involved with a couple of charity activities on a weekly basis and does some fundraising activities for one of the nationally known hospitals. She also spent quite a bit of time at the health club keeping fit. Her week is usually quite busy with all she is involved in and enjoys being with me on evenings during the weeks when I am home and on weekends. Once in a while, she will travel with me on my business trip. Well, back to the present. I arrived in LA on Friday at 11:10 a.m. as planned. That's right. I arrived 6 hours before I left. That sounds oh so wrong and pretty funny, but it is true. You have to remember the international dateline and it just happens. Another example is if you fly from Detroit to Chicago, you can also arrive before you left since the flight takes less than an hour and the time difference is an hour. That has nothing to do with the international dateline, but it should help you understand my arriving so early from Tokyo. From Detroit to Chicago, you beat the clock, but from Tokyo to LA, you beat the calendar. When I got in, I immediately called home to let Nancy know I had arrived on time and she wasn't there. I left a message on the machine and went to get my bags from the baggage claim. It took a bit longer than usual for the bags to come out, so I was just hanging around. As soon as I had my bag, I headed to the shuttle to take me to my car. I knew that Nancy wasn't home, so I decided to go over to my office and get some of my paperwork caught up so the next week wouldn't be so hectic. I got home a little after 5 p.m. and Nancy's Beamer was in the garage. The problem was that there was a Ford F-150 parked in my stall in the garage. I parked behind Nancy on the driveway and went into the garage and closed the door. I snooped around the pickup truck a bit to see if I could tell whose it was. I saw a paycheck stub lying on the seat from the health club and noted the name. It was Roger Williams. I immediately got a really bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. Roger was the epitome of the perfect male specimen. He was a personal trainer at our club, and except for his facial features, he could be Arnold Schwarzenegger's twin when he was 30 years old. And no, I don't mean he looked like Danny DeVito. Roger is about 6 feet 4 inches tall, probably weighs 230 pounds with not an ounce of unnecessary fat. He is sculpted to perfection. That feeling in the pit of my stomach didn't get any better as I thought about these facts. I went into the house and could not see Nancy, so I knew she must be upstairs. The feelings kept getting worse and worse. I decided to move forward with stealth and caution to see what was going on. I crept up the stairs and down the hallway to our bedroom. As I neared the door, I could hear talking and moaning. I was beyond feeling bad now. I was downright sick. Sick with the knowledge that the love of my life, my darling wife, my confidant, my lover was having sex with Roger. Apparently, Nancy had made the mistake of thinking I was coming home at 11:10 a.m. on Saturday morning. She must have forgotten that the international dateline plays havoc with the calendar. She must have thought that she had the whole night to be with Roger and have him leave in the morning. She thought wrong. I just stood there. I couldn't move. I stood in the hallway outside our room and listened. I listened to the sounds of their sexual activities and their conversation. I was churning inside. My rage was growing with every second. But I listened. "Oh, Roger, you fuck me so good," she growled. I could hear him slapping up against her, but I didn't know if he was taking her doggy style or missionary style. I just know he was pounding it to her big time because I could hear her grunt as he hit home every time. "Who gives you the best cock, bitch?" he asked. "Oh God, Roger, you do by far the best cock I've ever had," she answered. "I have loved having you fuck me while John is out of town. Even better than that wimp husband of yours," he prodded. "John's not a wimp, Roger, but you do fuck me better than he does," she answered. "Now just shut up and start hard and fast. I'm sure if you took my blood pressure right then and there, it would have blown the top off of the gauge." I was churning inside. I was in a rage. I was so hurt and disappointed. But at the same time, I was a steam engine ready to blow. I screamed, "You sons of bitches!" I stormed into the room. There they were with him fucking my wife doggy style and both of their backs to me. They jumped apart as I entered the room and both just stared at me with shocked looks on their faces. "Get off my wife, you lowly motherfucking bastard," I yelled. "Get your miserable ass out of my fucking house this minute, you cocksucking slime ball. Get out." Nancy started to scream and cry, and I told her, "I will deal with you next, you fucking her slut. Now get your ass moving, Roger," I yelled again. With that, I grabbed him and started to push him around. Big mistake. He was a guilty son of a bitch for fucking another man's wife. And had I not grabbed him, he probably would have left. And I am guessing it wouldn't have taken him long. But I grabbed him, and he immediately turned defensive. I then tried to throw a punch at him. You know, they always say that the best defense is a good offense, and he used that principle to the utmost. He grabbed me by the arms and threw me backwards. Nancy was screaming at him to not hurt me. But old Roger didn't take much heed to her words. He kept pushing me back down the hallway. And when we got to the top of the stairs, he shoved me backwards and down I tumbled. I heard Nancy scream again as I tumbled backwards down the stairs. I felt bones breaking and the intense pain that followed for a few seconds before I blacked out. When I regained consciousness, a paramedic was kneeling beside me putting a foam cast on my broken left arm. I had an oxygen mask on my face to help me breathe, and my chest, arms, legs, and head hurt like hell. They had lifted me onto a stretcher and were just finishing up on me before they were going to transport me to a hospital. I indicated to the paramedic that I was awake and that I wanted to talk. He took the mask off for a little while and started asking me questions. Before I would answer him, I said, "I do not want my wife to be allowed to be with me or see me or be in my room no matter what happens to me." At that moment, I heard her gasp, "Oh, John, no, please don't do that. I want to be with you and take care of you." I literally yelled, "No way, I don't want to see your face. You hear me?" Only it didn't come out as a yell, but more like a gurgle. And man, did that hurt. I knew I had some broken ribs at that moment and other serious problems. The paramedic nodded his understanding to me. Later, after they had finished working me over, I spoke with the doctor. I was in intensive care in critical condition. I had a concussion, a broken left arm for broken ribs, and a collapsed lung. I was on oxygen and they had a tube in my side to help reinflate my lung. I guess I was in pretty pathetic shape, but I was lucky I hadn't broken my neck or back. Nancy tried to see me numerous times, but the hospital staff honored my request to keep her away from me. She called me on the phone and I wouldn't take the calls. She sent written messages, but I tore them up without reading any of them. Friends would stop by to see how I was doing and always said that Nancy wanted to see me, to talk to me. I refused. All in all, I was in the hospital for 3 weeks. 10 days in intensive care and 11 days in a regular room. The police interviewed me a couple of times about what happened and wanted me to press charges against Roger, but I refused. During that time, I had a lot of time to think about my life and where I had been and where I would be going from here. I was born with a temper. My mother and father knew I had a temper and would do just about anything to keep me from getting upset. There would be times when something would go wrong and I would go off, but not too often. When it happened, you didn't want to be around me because I would go way out there over the edge. That is what happened when I walked into my bedroom. I was going to be out over the edge. But unfortunately, Roger was a better specimen than I was in temper or not. He got the best of me. But the rage was there. Throughout my childhood, I was in trouble for my temper. Things were so bad that I got on trouble frequently. How did I control my temper in the years that ensued? I plotted my revenge. If someone had wronged me, I would think for hours on end how I would get even with them, how I would make them pay for what they had done. With the plotting, my temper would cool, and I never actually got to the point of exacting my revenge. The bomb was diffused and life moved on. I knew that was not going to happen this time. While I lay in the hospital, I started plotting my revenge. I would fix Roger good, and I would fix Nancy too. I would make them pay. It didn't take me long to determine what I was going to do. Now all I had to do was put the people in place to help me and get out of the hospital so I could make it happen. I called Jim Burton, the manager of the health club that we owned. He came up to the hospital to see me and I asked him to poke around and find out everything he could about Roger. When I asked him to do that, he got a very funny look on his face. "John, I already know some things about Roger, but I will look into his activities further," he said. "What is it you know, Jim?" I asked. "Well, his name never has come out, but I am certain he is the reason for several marriage breakups among members of our club," he shared. "Well, Jim, he is the reason I am here, and he is the reason my marriage is in a shambles too," I groaned. "I understand, John," he replied, "and I will do everything I can to get you specifics on him." "Thanks, Jim. And until I tell you, just keep all of this under your hat, okay?" I asked. "Sure," he said. "Get better quick, boss." When Jim got back to me, he told me that rumor had it that Nancy and Roger had been having an affair for the last 2 months. He was her personal trainer, and those around the club had heard him coming on to her a number of times, and she never told him to stop. All of the ladies liked Roger because he was a first-class hunk, and most of them were speculating that he and Nancy were getting it on. Jim told me that Roger fucked Sue Johnson, Mary Jo Lewis, Jane Baldwin, Sally Dorrell, and others. 3 of the marriages were ruined and ended in divorce. One lady had a nervous breakdown because of him, and numerous marriages were in trouble. I told him to lay low on that information until I told him when to move. Then Jim was going to fire Roger for sexual harassment of members. It would be quick and easy with no repercussions to the club. When I got out of the hospital, I went home and saw my wife. She begged me, "Please, John, can't we talk about this?" I told her, "I am not going to discuss this with you at this time, Nancy. I'm going to move out for a while, but eventually I will be back." I packed some bags and got ready to leave. "Nancy," I said, "I'm going to move into the condo. Please do not come there and do not call me there." After I moved into our downtown condo, I made all the necessary contacts to execute my plan and waited until my body was healed. Nancy did not listen to me and called me every day while I was there. Eventually, I answered I refused to meet her or discuss what had happened, and certainly not what I was going to do. Then, it was time to execute my revenge. I told Jim to have Roger stay late at the club on that Friday night. He was to meet a new client that needed a personal trainer. It was a natural way to get him there alone. At 9:30 p.m., I walked in with 5 masked men. 3 of the men were husbands of women that Roger had fucked, and 2 were bodybuilders from our health club. We brought them along just to be sure that we would have no problems with Roger. Roger tried to run out, but we all cornered him. They restrained him, and we took him by van to a small run-down motel in a seedier part of town. You must know that the 3 husbands did exact some of their own revenge on Roger. Each man in turn beat on him a while as they said, "This is for what you did to my wife and me." No serious damage was done, but he won't be forgetting that beating anytime soon. The bodybuilders hog-tied him for me. He was groaning a bit, but basically was not hurt. With him hog-tied, even in my condition, I was able to handle him by myself quite easily, and I let him know that he was mine for quite a few hours. We then proceeded to make him drink alcohol. I had arranged for a local hairstylist to arrive about that time, and a few minutes later there was a knock on the door. He came in with all of his tools and started to look Roger over. "Yes, sir," he smirked. "This is going to be one fine subject for me to work on, boss." I held him in place, and over the next several minutes the guy went to work on him. He shaved half his head and one of his eyebrows. His long, flowing hair all gone. We all laughed and took pictures with him, then asked him to accept all his evil deeds and videotape them. Then we beat him a bit more. One of the guys then asked if he had videotaped his work. To our surprise, he did record it all. We checked his phone, and there it was. Every act was recorded. He intended to blackmail the women for money. We even found the video where he is seen beating me. We then beat him up a bit more. When we got through with him, I knew he wouldn't be so proud to show off his face anytime soon. We left him hog-tied in the room and left the motel. It was around 10 a.m. and we were long gone from the motel when I called the motel manager and said, "I left a hog-tied asshole in room 17 and you need to go free him." Then I just hung up. A day later, Roger filed a complaint against me and the other husbands. We got him to revoke the complaint with just a few phone calls from very special people. He was fired from the club, and his details were sent to most of the health clubs and gyms throughout the industry. Good luck finding a job. Now I needed to attend to Nancy. I reached home and handed her the divorce papers. I told her that I am taking away all the assets, and since she had good sex with me, I will pay her for that by giving her 10% worth of our assets. Only money, no part investments, and no house. She can go find herself work and get paid for it. She started crying and stated that she made a mistake and wanted me to forgive her. I told her that I would be making a mistake if I forgive her. I told her that she not only soiled my marital bed, but she compared me with her lover in bed. She enjoyed his every thrust and she wanted more. So now she is free to go to her stud and go berserk fucking him. She then changed the tone and stated that she will fight this in the court. Then I proceeded to play the video from Roger's phone. I smiled and stated, "Yes, dear, you can go and fight the case, but let me tell you what will happen in that case. You will get 50% of everything I have and you will have 100% of the humiliation that this case will bring. I will post your sex tape on every roadside billboard. I will ensure that you will be outcast from every social group you have. All your relatives and friends will get this video. Your parents will get a copy, and so will every workplace that you intend to work in the future. You can have your short-term gain and lose big time in the long run." I played my card and looked at her in silence. She was crying and begged me to forgive her. She had no option but to agree with my terms. I then asked her to pack her bags and leave the house. A few weeks later, we met at the court, and as I had promised, I gave her a fair share of my assets. I had actually given her 20% of everything in the settlement. A few months later, I was a free man. I did send the video to her parents, though. They saw the video and just sent a text message telling me that they have cut ties with her. I never saw her again. Last I heard, she had moved to Alaska away from everyone. I now pay to have my needs taken care of, and for love I have a giant Bernard. Until next time.